Nicolae Ceaușescu was the communist leader of Romania from 1965 to 1989, a political figure who profoundly shaped the country's trajectory through an authoritarian, centralized, and repressive regime whose effects were felt across all areas of social, economic, and cultural life. Rising to power after the death of Gheorghe Gheorghiu-Dej, Ceausescu was initially perceived as a relatively open leader, capable of asserting a degree of independence from the Soviet Union during the Cold War. His public condemnation of the 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia brought him international recognition, diplomatic and economic support from Western countries, and significant domestic popularity, as he was seen by many as a defender of national sovereignty. However, this image quickly faded as power became increasingly concentrated in his hands, with the party and the state transformed into instruments of his personal will. The regime's ideology evolved into a rigid form of national communism, combining Marxist-Leninist principles with exaggerated nationalism used to legitimize leadership and justify isolation from external influences. The cult of personality reached extreme proportions, with Ceausescu constantly portrayed as a visionary and indispensable leader, while Elena Ceausescu was artificially elevated to the status of a renowned scientist and major political figure, reinforcing the familial nature of the dictatorship. Economically, the regime initially experienced a phase of accelerated development based on forced industrialization, massive investments in heavy industry, infrastructure, and large-scale projects, largely financed through foreign loans. This strategy ignored economic efficiency and the real needs of the population, generating deep structural imbalances and a significant external debt. In the 1980s, Ceausescu's decision to repay the entire foreign debt in a very short period led to severe austerity policies with dramatic consequences for living standards, including widespread shortages, rationing of food, electricity, and fuel, declining quality of life, and growing social frustration. The control exercised by the repressive apparatus, particularly the secret police, turned society into a space dominated by fear and suspicion, where constant surveillance, censorship, and intimidation severely limited individual freedoms. The press, radio, and television functioned exclusively as propaganda tools, education and culture were strictly subordinated to official ideology, and contacts with the outside world were tightly controlled. As economic conditions worsened, international isolation deepened, and reforms were consistently rejected. Public dissatisfaction steadily increased despite the regime's attempts to maintain control through force and manipulation. In December 1989, amid the collapse of communist regimes across Eastern Europe, protests that began in Timișoara quickly spread throughout the country, and Ceausescu's attempt to suppress the uprising through speeches and military intervention failed. The loss of army support and the collapse of political authority led to his arrest, and a summary trial held on Christmas Day ended with the death sentence and execution of Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu. His violent end symbolized the fall of a regime built on fear, propaganda, and isolation, while also opening a difficult period of transition for Romanian society. Today, Nicolae Ceaușescu remains a deeply controversial figure, viewed by some as a leader who sought to assert Romania's independence on the international stage, and by others as the symbol of an oppressive dictatorship responsible for the suffering, stagnation, and lasting trauma of an entire generation, with his legacy continuing to be debated and reinterpreted in collective memory.